I'm speaking with Gillian Snider. We're going to walk a mile with Gillian today on so many
Brave
roads.
people.
So, Gillian, I know that you're a pretty well-known musician here in Saskatoon. You've done lots of projects with the Whiskey Jerks. 2 CDs to your name. You've done some work with Leslie Stanwyck. You've done tributes. I saw your
Hmm.
Janice Joplin show, and I didn't see your Joni Mitchell show. I would have liked to have seen that. I know you've done some stuff with Fabian Minima, and I love everything that I've seen you do.
Oh,
But
thanks.
I think it's time that people got to hear what you think about what you do. So maybe I don't know. It's a really broad question, but why don't you describe your relationship to music?
Oh, well, I mean, it started, I was born into a musical family, and most people are, but like as we've had talked about this before, my dad was the music director for CBC from the late 50s until the mid 70s. So he wrote all the music, he did all the scores, all the rehearsals were at our house. Well, a lot of them were. And then my mom and my auntie Coralie were regular spots on the Tommy Hunter show. So our music in CBC goes back pretty deep. That was how I was raised. So there was music around all the time. But when I got to be older, I was kind of a rebel and put all that stuff sort of behind me. And I started studying classical repertoire when I was about 19. So I went to Royal Conservatory in downtown Toronto and did all of the music theory and history and I think I did up to grade 9 piano, I guess. And it's just a part that I neglected. I never studied classical music. And then I just started singing in choral ensembles. And the reason I'm giving this preamble is because I was a serious late bloomer when it came to performing professionally. I didn't have enough nerve to get up with a band or an ensemble to sing until I was like 41.
Wow,
So,
are you kidding? That's
no, I'm
that's
not.
big. Wow. And so how did you do that? How did that happen for you?
Well, it was kind of an interesting thing. I had a very good friend, Leanne Hind, and she was recording a record, and she wanted me to sing harmony with it. And I'd sung in so many choirs and vocal ensembles, and I'm very comfortable singing harmony. So I agreed to do it. And she also knew that I was very nervous, and she was trying to get me out of my shell. So she also wanted me to play piano as well, which was a difficult thing for me to do. I just had extreme stage fright when it came to playing musical instruments, and she was very encouraging. And so we were in her van, and she was driving myself and a couple of other musicians out to the recording studio. I think it was out in Warman here in Saskatchewan. And and so I was chatting with Roy Cydia, who's a percussionist. And I said, well, my mom, she was a singer. And in her later years, she did this vibes and voice thing. And I've always thought it'd be kind of cool to sing jazz and do that because he played vibraphone. And we were just chatting about music and stuff. And then he said, well, come join my show at the basement on Third Avenue. And of course, I was very nervous, and I had a rehearsal with him afterwards to do this.
So
And
tell me who that
and
was again.
huh?
Tell me who that
Oh,
was again.
Roy Cydia?
Roy City. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
he's an amazing drummer. He's actually my son's drum teacher. He's sort of the godfather of all the amazing drummers and percussionists in town. So I had a rehearsal with him, or maybe two, and uh, and then of course I chickened out and told him I couldn't do it because I was too scared. And then he said, I knew you were going to try to back out, so I put your face on the poster. And so I was forced into doing it. And I always give this example because it changed my life. I was on the stage with these professional jazz musicians, and it started my love of singing jazz, and that's kind of where I
Oh,
started
that's very cool. So,
performing.
so that's kind of like my next question, really. It's part of your relationship. The Whiskey Jerks. It's in a lane. That as a band, you're in a lane kind of on your own, but there's a
Yeah,
strong jazz underpinning to most of what you do.
yeah.
And so, would you call yourself a jazz musician, a vocalist? I know you accordion is the instrument that I've seen you play most.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, it took me a long while before I picked up the accordion again in my early 40s because I just fell in love with the instrument, and I needed to get over my fear of playing instruments in front of people. So that's when I started. So I started writing on the accordion. But when it comes to being a jazz musician, I would call myself a jazz musician. I Not because I'm proficient in like accordion or piano when it comes to playing jazz, but as a jazz singer. that's what's so wonderful about jazz is it gives the singer room to solo alongside the instruments. So anybody that says a jazz singer is a musician is crazy because the music's technically difficult, and for any jazz singer that scats and solos, you're doing exactly what an instrumentalist does. So I would call myself a jazz musician, but as a vocalist. If
As a
that makes
vocalist.
sense.
Oh, that's
I've been
interesting.
trying
Yeah.
to like brave playing jazz on the accordion and piano, but I haven't got there yet. I'm just not good enough at those instruments to do that.
Do you
So,
honestly think you'll ever be good enough to say that you're good enough?
no.
I don't know any musician who says they're good enough.
Well, I mean, that's why you need good friends like Roy City and Leanne Hine to give you a push. It's
Yeah,
like, pushing you down the ski slope or something
right.
because you're
Yeah,
not going to have enough nerve to do it yourself. So I've been very fortunate having really great supportive friends
sure.
when
So,
it comes
well,
to
I
that.
tell you what, take a little sideways tour now to songwriting. Talk to me a
Okay.
little about your songwriting because that's a different element to who you are.
Well, it is, and that was another thing that I never started doing. I just always assumed I mean, all my friends wrote songs, and all the people I knew had original bands. They wrote songs, and I thought, well, that's not anything I can do. I play classical repertoire, and and I sing these standards, but I can't write. And then somebody said, just start writing. So I did again in my 40s, but I do it sort of backwards from most. Musicians because they get a riff in their head and they can't get out and then they have the song and the music but then they have to put words to it. For me, I take great enjoyment in telling songs is telling stories through lyrics. So I write the lyrics and then I put the music to that and
Mm-hmm.
how I feel the music needs to fit in, and in a way it's kind of a backwards way of doing it, but that's kind of how Leslie Stanwyck and I ended up collaborating and writing because we were just getting together as friends, having tea and visiting, and it was like the Reese's peanut butter cup thing. It was like, well, I love writing lyrics, but it's so hard for me putting the music. She goes, oh my god, I've got so much music, but I hate writing lyrics. And so I brought all of my lyrics over, and we had a full album like
Yeah,
right away
right.
of stuff. So
Yes.
and she brought lyrics to life that had been sitting dormant for years because I just couldn't get the music that seemed right, and she just understood them, and it was really quite amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I know that you've toured with the Whiskey Jerks, and I
Yeah,
know so for a while you did this as a full-time gig.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so, have you and will you or do you aspire to working full-time as a musician?
Oh, absolutely. I would love that. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not a walk in the park to make enough money to do it full time. And there's a lot of elements now, especially with social media. And there's a lot of sort of platforms that you have to be very present on in order to make a living doing it. As far as an original artist, like when you're writing your own music. But even my mother, like after she and my aunt left the Tommy Hunter show, they had to tour 9 months out of the year in order to make enough money to pay the bills.
Right.
So it's not an easy feat, and touring is definitely has to be a part of it. The only way that you can make money easily, really, if you want to make money as a musician, is to get your songs on satellite radio. I mean, that's kind of the way to make money, but it's a labor of love. And touring is my absolute favorite part of it. Like playing the live show and
Yeah.
seeing the faces in front of me, like that's my favorite part of it. And even for my mother, she had a love-hate relationship with the road. She would get antsy when she was home too long because she missed performing. And if I could make a living just playing live shows, that would be the perfect scenario for me.
Yeah. Now the pandemic has certainly realigned everybody's attitude towards live music.
Yes.
And people are relying on streaming services in a different way. And lots of the big guys, big musicians, are making their music available online and streaming. Is there
Yeah.
is there a future in that? Do you think for professional musicians? And I know that you're also very aware of society and you're very conscious of sustainability and those issues.
Yes.
Can you
Yeah.
see a relationship between online distribution of music and environmental sustainability? Like traveling, emits a lot of burnt gas.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that's true. Fossil fuel emissions and all the rest. I think the best touring that I did, as far as being environmentally conscious is a train tour that we did. So we did everything on the train.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right all the way to Prince Edward Island to the Maritimes and back
Yeah.
with the Great Train Reverie. And that was the perfect way to travel, actually, because we played live shows on the train all the way there and back as well.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like the live stream is a good way. And actually, it leveled out everybody. It leveled out all musicians from the most famous to people just starting out because everybody has to be, is doing the same thing. So that's a cool part of it. As far as the live show, though, there really is nothing like having the proximity.
Yeah.
So unless my former roommate and good friend Felipe, he tours on his bicycle. That's an extreme, but he has toured all over the Arctic and Saskatchewan and South Africa and Russia, and he has his little amp in his bass, and he does his tour on a bicycle.
Yeah, it kind of seems like a bit of an unfair hardship in some ways.
Well, in a way, it is. One thing, if you want to look at it sort of a positive light with this pandemic, is that people have been really focusing on local. So the live shows that we're able to perform, where you're not on tour. There's a lot of venues that support here in Saskatchewan, especially that support live music. But as far as getting on a train or a bicycle, I really don't know any other way that one can get your music out there and have a one-on-one proximity show. But the streaming is a way to do it. But the thing's like not a lot of people are comfortable in that context. Like you and I are fortunate because we host radio shows.
Yep.
So we're used to just talking away and chatting with the people that are out there, even though we're the only ones like in the studio.
Yeah, right.
So when you do a live show, we've streamed many shows with Fabian and I, with the Ray Elliott Band, and also the Whiskey Jerks. I find it easy to be we played in a not an auditorium, but a huge concert hall, and there was just two cameras like at the end of the hall, and not a single person in the seat.
Yep.
But luckily, I know how to just imagine that everybody's out there and look at the cameras as if they're the people that I'm singing to. But there's a lot of people out there that they find it uncomfortable if they're singing to an empty room, like it feels awkward.
Yeah, you need that. So you need that immediate feedback, right? The energy.
Yeah, exactly. Because the audience there, it's a symbiotic relationship, as far as energy and passion and all that. It's a two-way street there. The musician really needs to have that audience there, I think.
I agree.
But perhaps it's like we're heading into year 3. So perhaps with the streaming, people are getting more comfortable with it.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. So listen, another question. Just another question now.
Of course.
I know that, like, because of your radio show, and I know you bring a lot of passion to your radio show and to all the music that you do. But I'd like to know who's influencing you now musically. Who are you listening to, and who's influencing and maybe shaping your next musical ideas?
That's a really good question, because there's so much. Like I have to say that I'm influenced by big bands like Lemon Bucket Orchestra and Gogo Bordello that sort of implement folk, traditional cultural folk music in with rock and prog rock, that sort of thing. That's what I really, really love. As far as specific musicians that I'm finding influential, like they've always I always go back to the Frank Zappa library and people that were sort of walking to a beat of their own drum and doing something that's completely outside the box, and that's what kind of influences myself and influences all of at least the Whiskey Jerks.
I was going to say cultural folk. I mean, you got me talking about the Whiskey Jerks. Yeah. So do the Whiskey Jerks have a new CD in the offing?
Yeah, well, we almost have enough songs for a full album, but there's been talk on the table because we have a whole bunch of new songs, so that we've been rehearsing and actually performing some of them for the last year or two during the pandemic. We've been performing them sort of online and the shows that we've been booked for. But so now we're talking about maybe like recording an EP. We don't quite have enough songs for a full album, but we have about 5 or 6 that are on the go. So it's something that we've we've been discussing quite a
Yeah.
bit, and we've been playing like and rehearsing the new material and trying it out when we've been playing live shows. So
Nice,
we
nice.
do
Yeah.
have the fodder. We just need the funds.
Oh, I think that's a title. The fodder and that's a fodder and the funds.
Yeah,
I
maybe
think
that's the
yeah.
name
There you
of
go.
the next
The
album.
next EP. EPs seem to be away these days. They seem to be more popular now. I mean, always been the single, right? And there's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
always been the album. But albums and the themes of albums seems to have died away, right? That it's such a lost art, I think.
Yeah, it has. I have been coming across some really cool artists, like I said the Om Project. There's a couple of them that actually are doing concept albums, which I think is really cool and adventurous. But it really comes down to the time and the money, like to do a full album. And I find that the trend now is releasing the single. And like you said, so if you go, like a lot of the bands that I check out that we play on radio, that send new music to me, they usually just have the EP format, either 3 or 4 songs. It's
Right.
easy to release it and get out there because the main thing is keeping your presence out there with music and a lot of new music all the time. So I think that's why bands are saying, well, we've got this, get it out there, get it out there.
Mm.
Even talking to friends that are in the business of like publicists and promoters, they always say, get that single out there, whether the album's done or not. Just get that single out there.
Right.
And for
Right.
all of you out there who are releasing singles, apparently May and September are the 2 best times to be releasing
Yeah,
singles.
yeah, 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 yeah. So there sort of a unifying element to this next collection of songs? Is there one sort of thematic link to them?
We don't actually, not for this one. A lot of stuff because the more we're together, we've been together for like 10 years now.
Mm,
And it's been a long journey of me convincing all the other musicians in the Whiskey Jerks to bring their songs to the table. So Anna and Peter have always been good doing that. So I'm trying to also get songs out of Sarah, our new clarinet player, and Nevin and Aiden, because I think the more diverse the songwriting is, because that's one thing we like to be eclectic.
yeah.
So when everybody's sort of bringing their own stuff to the table, we haven't talked about having a specific theme. I mean, mine is always drinking whiskey, it seems to be. So
Well, not
I
not
got that covered. But
not that you need one. It's certainly not. And I mean, one of the things about listening to the Whiskey Jerks is that it's a broad landscape, right?
well,
I hear it as a broad landscape anyway. There's so many influences in there that it's yeah, you're not listening to a single kind of music. You're in a lane of your own, which is very cool.
Well,
For
I
me,
appreciate
yeah,
that. I
yeah,
appreciate that very much. It's sort of, in a way, sometimes when you get to the logistics of selling your music, it's difficult when people ask you what your genre is, and they always
right,
say you have to pick a genre. Pick a
yeah.
genre, like when you're applying for festivals or getting your music up on the radio and all. We need a genre, and I'm like, well, it's klezmer infused jazz rock,
But
blues, country,
I think
and then they're like,
I,
no, pick it. I'm
I
like,
think you
I
nailed it.
honestly don't know how to pick one
I think you
because
nailed it with cultural folk. I really think you nailed it in our conversation here. You said cultural folk, and that,
yeah.
to me, that's a really nice summation of what it is. But
I'm
uh,
going to use that next time.
I don't know, but in today's music world, I don't know that genres play the same kind of role that they used to. And it's always been about selling, really. Yeah, like
Yes, it is.
you're in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
certain bin in the record store, right? So. And I think that the genres are sort of now there's genres and subgenres and genres within subgenres, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
you want
There's some
to,
genres I've never even heard of before. I was just
yeah,
applying for a music festival. I'm like, what
yeah,
genre is this? I've never even heard of this genre before.
so it makes marketing a different kind of challenge for sure. But yeah, but when you've got a distinct lane like you have, but you know what, but also as a musician, you did this tribute to Janice Joplin, and I would
Yeah.
have loved to have heard the Joni Mitchell one. So there's an element to you that's not being represented in the Whiskey Jerks, right?
Yes, no, definitely not.
As
Yeah.
a vocalist, I think, eh?
As a vocalist, yeah, purely a vocalist and a laborers of love because I've loved Joni Mitchell for a very long time. And Janice Joplin, I've always loved. People are always asking me to sing Janice Joplin at shows, probably because by the end of it, I sound more like Tom Waits. I don't know, but it's like, you should be singing Janice Joplin. And so that came along when we were approached. Like I was approached by one of the clubs here in Saskatoon. Like, would you do a Janis Joplin show? I'm like,
Sure, yeah,
yes, I
yeah,
would. Then that's when I seriously dove into her library, into her catalog and Big Brother and the Holding Company. So I'd always
Yes.
known her, and I'd always sing Mercedes Benz and things like that at shows. But diving into her catalog was just
Yeah.
unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
a whole new world
Yeah.
that I love.
Mm.
And Joni Mitchell was a labor, love, and passion for me for a long time. But now Janice Joplin is
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
because it released some new things in singing that I've never done. And that's basically getting in touch with the blues, getting in touch
For
with,
sure.
that soul, because everything she just would rip her heart and her guts out for everybody,
Yeah.
when she would
Yeah.
sing.
Yeah.
And
Just
that's a whole new barrier to cross to actually climb into that.
yeah.
And so it's been a really good learning experience for me.
So we're exhausted now because we've just walked a mile.
Oh, okay. You're probably exhausted because I wouldn't stop talking.
So, just in closing, what didn't you get to tell people that they should know about you as a musician?
As a musician, that I'm in a continuous learning curve, and one of these days I will perform a show of jazz standards where I will be accompanying myself on the piano. That's my next
Oh,
goal.
ooh, a solo show.
Yeah, but
Oh,
I'm probably going to be 90 when it happens. At that point, in
oh,
full
that's a great
dementia, so I
idea.
won't be nervous.
Can I
What?
open? Can I open for you?
Oh yes, most definitely.
Well,
I'm
there we
working
go.
on it.
We just worked a show together. There you go.
There you go. It's
So,
happening. It's going to happen. So you have to be that friend that pushes me to
give
do it.
give yourself a deadline and let's do
Okay,
it.
excellent.
Listen, thanks, Gillian.
Oh, it's a real pleasure talking to you as always,
And
Joe.
I'll send you a copy of this for sure.
Sweet. Well, thank you. I really appreciated this opportunity very
Okay,
much.
take
Okay.
care. Have a good show.
All right. Thanks. Oh, yeah. We've got 6 minutes. Excellent. I'll see you on the airwaves.
Okay, bye bye.
Okay. Bye.